afternoon, everybody. We are going to continue our salon conversations. This is really a good panel, and I studied all of our panelists really well. This is like really special to get insight of some of these people on the panel. And, you know, I learned this from one of my mentors, that it's better for you to introduce yourself. I want to introduce yourselves, but here's what the practice is. You guys are like really amazing panelists, and we're not used to like bragging on ourselves. So I just want them to start introducing themselves and say your title, but you guys have accomplished a lot in your careers individually. So you're gonna say your name and say the work that you do now. And some of you even have like some history with some other big companies too. So go ahead and feel free to do that. I'm gonna start with you, Carmela.
Okay, great. Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I'm Carmela Luzzi. I'm the Senior Director and Head of brand identity management as well as paid media at Viator, which is a Tripadvisor company where we sell travel experiences and things to do in destination. So when you're on vacation, you can book attractions, tours, etc. Before you get there. So it kind of takes some of the guesswork out when you're traveling. I've got about 20 years of experience, and I've worked at other companies like Vice Media Group, and also a lot of my career was at, well, when I started, it was MTV Networks, then it became Viacom, and now it's Paramount Global. So a lot of time there as well.
Sorry, yeah. I'm JD, or Jean-Daniel in French. I work at Camphouse, with a media operations platform where advertisers and agencies collaborate on media plans, from approval to basically actual numbers. I spent 15 years in paid media, mostly on global accounts, mostly in luxury and beauty. I stayed other companies and Kering most notably, which I had a lot of fun with these brands.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Natalie Scully. I'm EVP of Global Revenue Distribution and Data Operations. It's a mouthful. At Vevo. Vevo is the leading global music network. We are complement to the MTV space here. We have over 1 million pieces of official music videos from all of the major music artists that are out there. We syndicate that content across multiple different platforms like YouTube, Samsung TV Plus, and we sell and monetize the advertising around that. My area of focus is in a few sectors of the business. The first is around revenue operations, which is really the monetization and the execution of the advertising against our content. The distribution side of it is really about syndicating our channels, our 24-hour linear channels that we have for all the different genres across different platforms. And then data is all about taking those insights that we get and reporting on it and giving our teams the ability to use that to build better products.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Vincent. I am the UK MD for Utiq. Utiq is a joint venture between the 4 largest telcos in Europe, and we are delivering a persistent ID at scale first of all, our first mission is to bring back trust and responsibility and addressability to the open web to make that a more competitive environment for brands. My role is everything. As you can imagine, it's a startup. There's 3 people in the UK, so everyone does everything. Prior to Utiq, I was at Index Exchange, which is a supply-side platform, working very much on with a focus on publisher side. Previous to that, I was selling high-impact ads. So I've also been in the industry for 20 plus years.
Yes, you see what I mean. And I'm going to give you more context of who I am, just so that you know why I was fangirling. I'm a TV presenter in the U.S., and I'm a contributor to the Today Show and also the Drew Barrymore Show. I also appear on GMA as well. And but I run a production company, Dream Network Media, so we're a content creating production company. So I was like, this panel is quite amazing, and we'll just get started because there's been like a lot of AI talk, right? But we're going to discuss and unpack it from the point of view within of these companies, right? So this is kind of really a special panel to get into. So I'm going to have a fun one, and I'm going to start with you, JD. And we can popcorn around if somebody else is thinking about it. But first, so actually, with the panel, are you guys already integrating AI practices internally?
Yes, I think is the very short answer.
This is a very quick one. It's like obviously, right?
Yeah, we're doing it on both sides, both from a B2C perspective as well as our B2B supply side. We want to make it easier for suppliers who have experiences to sell to get on our platform and our marketplace, and then we also want to be faster about generating content at scale. So we're figuring out ways to do that, and have actually already onboarded a bunch of tools to help us get there.
And I'd say from my side, because I'm a bit more of the technical side of the business, I guess, that AI has been, it's almost like rebranded from machine learning, which has been within the tech solutions for a long time. So yes, it's absolutely key to bring in the efficiencies, but obviously now it's getting much more exposure at a mass level, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think we've been evolving the ML sort of space and bringing in AI into that. And it's more around efficiency for us and product creation for us, go-to-market positioning. I think an area that we're also, because this is new to the space, it's about the governance around AI, what tools to use, how to use it. And I think that's a big one that we're trying to solve and is an important one to get right as we continue down this journey.
Just I think on the topic of trust is becoming a big topic linked right now to governance. I think this year at Cannes, it was also spoken about in a prior panel, but we've been talking about AI for 2 years or 3 years at Cannes. This year is a lot about the trust and how large advertisers, companies, or tech can actually trust if you only have a 90% correct response. Is that good enough for businesses like Coca-Cola or Unilever or P&G or Tripadvisor?
Right. So old news, right? AI is such old news for these guys. And so here's my special fun icebreaker question for you is if you had an AI agent that you were to make a CMO for just one day, what would it do differently than your teams? And not throwing your teams under the bus, but we know we're not throwing them under the bus. And I'm going to start with you, JD, if you can imagine that.
I think especially if you take the idea that if you let AI run, you're therefore only going to be database based. So it means that it's not only going to be about our own bias on the activities that we run in go-to-market. I think it would kill cold emailing for sure, because that as a actual tactic response is terrible, and especially in B2B company do it. I think CRM and cold email would go down very quickly in order to be able to go in future demand generation tactics, which is as good in B2B as it is in B2C, like luxury does so well.
Can I just jump on that? Because I was this morning, I was at the Retail Media Summit hosted by Nectar 360, and they had a retail futurist on stage, and it was mind-blowing. And there was this whole piece around AI talking to AI. So maybe someone in your company is trying to sell something, you connect to the AI in your potential client, and they talk to each other, figure it out, then who is the right stakeholder to send this to? Are we interested? What's your percentage of interest? What are the timelines? And it's just absolutely crazy. But yeah, if I answer your question as well.
No, that's fine. I mean,
so I'm not a brand, but we talk to a lot of brands, and I think that one of the things that has resonated quite a lot recently in the last sort of 6 months on stage at different events is the human in the loop is such an overused phrase now as well, but it's about keeping that human element within. And I think if there was something a bold move with the CMO would be to actually look at bringing more of your community and your actual customers into your advertising and voice of the brand. I know Volkswagen did something recently where it was all Volkswagen owners that were part of the TV ad, smiling and very happy with their cars, but also sharing their experiences. It's a bold move. It's really brave, but it does, in this era when you can, synthetically create everything, it just keeps that real human core element in it.
Yeah, I'll take it from the lens of more execution, I think, like campaign execution. And for me, I think if they were to come in, they would build this dynamic, hyper-targeted campaign that would be always optimized based on performance, based on viewer, creatives, all of those things. And your question about why the team wouldn't do it, that was a good one for me, in essence, right? And that was a good one for me because in my mind, I think our teams want to do it, but I think we are limited by the tech that we have at the moment to execute like this, right? And that's where I think there's an interesting tie to, you know, AI is at a point where it's providing a lot of information, but the execution of those in a dynamic way that we would like is just not there yet. So yeah.
I would piggyback off of that actually too, because I think part of why our teams can't work as fast and what an AI CMO for the day might do is take a look at the marketing budget holistically, right? From what you spend on brand all the way down to what you spend on SEM, and versus just looking at a last touch or a last click type of ROAS activation, it would probably look at other metrics that are just as important, right? So what tactic is more incrementally relevant? Which tactic is bringing consumers down the funnel the fastest? What tactic is actually profitable versus just a revenue growth driver? And so I think if a CMO or an AI CMO were it for a day, it might take a look at making decisions more quickly around how do you shift budget. So in those instances, you don't necessarily have to ask for incremental budget, right? You can keep that budget the same, but it's about shifting it in a way that's like powerful for the brand.
So I'm going to introduce Alexis with the notes. Okay. Alexis, she's quite wonderful as well. She's Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at Stagwell. So we're doing the question of if you had an AI agent play CMO for the day,
Yes.
what would it do differently that maybe your teams right now would not be as willing to do?
Great. Well, hi, everyone. Sorry, since we are in the women's network here, it was a call from home from my kid who has a tummy issue, so life. But I appreciate the patience, and that's a great question. So I'm Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at Stagwell, and in that role, I oversee our integrated communications, our marketing, our research, and then also our Future of News initiative. And so when I think about the opportunity for AI agents and really using them, I think it's two things. One is like, how do you unlock the power of the team? And everyone says this, but use the team, use AI to take off some of those things that take time but aren't actually unlocking space for creativity. And I think that's really sort of the table stakes of what AI could do. And I love what you were saying about how can AI help make more efficient decision making. The counter I would also say, that, or not counter, but the build I would have on that great point is, how can AI help challenge some of the assumptions we have, because it is coming at it from obviously a large set of inputs wherever the LLM is pulling in the data. But you know, one of the things I'm really passionate about is monetization of quality journalism and the importance of news and the need for newsrooms to cover the most important stories of consequence, to give voice to people who don't have a voice, and to hold leaders to account. And so how, with brand safety and this notion of brand safety, how could things like AI agents actually look at these notions that we've sort of built a lot of our infrastructure on and challenge those preconceptions? And I think that's a really powerful thing, if we let the data speak for itself and then use our human capabilities and intelligence to augment it.
This wasn't in our question lineup, but I was at a tech conference last week, and one of my biggest takeaways was that the people who are in tech, who build these machines and these processes to solve real problems outside of the companies, they told me, all of them in different panels said that they would have never released OpenAI's ChatGPT because of the errors, right? And I'm thinking of you, JD, for this. Do you have any thoughts of like any use cases internally that you guys use, and then kind of just this thought process?
I think it's really interesting now because we have a whole of debate on the trust on the data, especially in marketing and advertising. We come from a place where there is absolutely no data quality to start with anyway. AI is not changing that. We don't know what we measure. We don't know viewability or badly. We don't know reach or badly. And so now AI is 90% right and 10% wrong. It's already a great improvement compared to spreadsheets. So I think it's interesting that we have that look. It's just that it's also showing to us where vertically each of our organization, we don't always have access to our own data. What was incremental in the last 15 campaigns? Not that anybody ran, but that somebody specifically ran. So in a way, the early release of ChatGPT and large language models was definitely a bit too fast, because if you're a doctor, that's a problem. And 90% rate is not great in medicine. But in marketing and data, it's actually really interesting on how we can use it to now improve the data we have. So these large language models allow you to be more specific than you were before, more vertical than you were before. And I find that very interesting in how it can help us evolve our advertising and incrementality plays.
Carmela, I'm going to direct this to you. In your work at Viator and previously at Vice, you helped reimagine brand storytelling. So in rebuilding these marketing strategies, what creative approaches have you found most effective?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and a little bit complicated, I would say, too. Yeah, because there is such a need for personalized creative at scale, right? You need to do it quickly. You want to make sure that you still, as like a brand marketer, you want to still make sure that you can harness the power of emotion, or like make sure that this ad still makes somebody feel some kind of way to get them down funnel, right? So I think at Viator, we have done a really good job of being able to like marry those two things, right? So we do work with a dynamic creative optimization tool, which helps us scale, because I don't think it's totally worth us, necessarily spending a ton of money on a junior editor when to make spec sizes of like 900 by 7, like all of these different spec sizes, which like a machine can do that. But I do need a creative team to still make the template of the ad feel great, like look sleek and catch the attention of people scrolling all over the place on the open web as well as on social media platforms. So I guess to answer sort of your question, you do have to marry both. It does take a human creative mind to develop what we think, and honestly, the way we talk to people and the music you put in and you embed in it, and how like that music draws somebody in, and how we use animation in all of our designs. So that's all human touch right now. I do feel like AI is getting better at that and closer to being able to do it, right? Yeah. Even like copy generation, we're using like an AI copy coach. At the end of the day, all of it still takes human QA, because it's not human, and you can't lose that connection to humanity and that emotion and the way it feels. So I think we try to do both. We marry it, and then we use AI where it's more efficient on processes that you don't need like necessarily that somebody hands on keyboards.
Yeah, it's a good assistant, right? I'm going to go to Sarah. You touched on it a little bit about privacy and security. When you think about rebuilding a marketing strategy, are there, and using AI, are there legacy practices that you can think of that brands actually should leave behind?
So I'm going to pick up your privacy point, because I think that, especially in Europe, we've seen privacy regulation just grow and grow and evolve. And to make it even more complicated, each market within Europe has different privacy regulation. And so I think like brands now have to be considering what their approach to privacy is, what like risk level they're prepared to take. It's very difficult to be 100% compliant, so you do have to look at what you're comfortable with doing, and aligning as much as you can with privacy in the market. But that needs to be a starting point. So I think that maybe to your question, it's never been the starting point. So now it should be, because this, to the point on trust, if you are respectful of privacy regulation, it's definitely not at the detriment to the growth or profitability of your business. It can be a business driver with better outcomes, because if you respect privacy, you start to build the user trust, you start to build your consumer your brand loyalty, and it's almost giving you an opportunity to reset and really grow much further than you ever would in today without putting that first. So I think that has to be core, whether it's your AI strategy that you're starting with or not, but it's fundamentally getting the basics right.
Alexis, how can AI support inclusive, diverse storytelling without feeling like automated, like keeping it human, right? That's always the big challenge.
Yeah, no, it's such a balance. And I think the trick is to always ground for a brand, to ground in your values and ground in who you are. And then remember AI is, at this point, where AI goes, we don't know. And I've heard a lot of hypotheses this week. We should all share war stories about doomsday versus the best possible outcome. But I think if a brand can really ground itself in its truth and ground itself in its values and live those values, then all of a sudden AI can be a complement to not only help curate the stories, but then make sure the stories that are being told are inclusive of all of those values. I think where it falls apart is if it becomes performative or if it's not rooted in in your core values and the actions you pursue as a brand. So if you are not living those values and then in turn expressing those values, you're going to miss out. Because I always say you sort of build a brand and you build that brand story by story, person by person. And I think one of the big trends I'm hearing on the Crescent is around community and the importance of curating those communities. And then that in turn gives you the license to operate as a business. It helps you build your reputation and sort of grow from there. So I think it really is about threading the two.
I'm so sorry, in what you said, I think there is also therefore a use case that is so interesting in how AI and diversity is currently a problem, let's be honest. Right? The models
That's
are
very true.
terrible. I was seeing a launch literally yesterday of a new technique for clothes layering. The video is an example of taking clothes off a 34 size lady. And that's tech is terrible in terms of gender bias in how it's illustrated. But also, it's not helping us when we create and when we use these chats. It's not reminding us of diversity factors that we could use. And I think that's a problem. That how can we use AI to remind us to be as representative as a brand should be and could be? And it's not really being a suggestion tool right now. A bit like algorithms in paid media have been a problem in the past of making you, go down that rabbit hole of TikTok targeting forever and therefore creating sub-communities and therefore dragging that problematically societally. I think for AI now, we also have that in our day-to-day work on how can AI suggest to us how to be more diverse and how to keep that in every asset, every campaign, every media choices we make.
Natalie, at Vevo, you guys are managing creative UX while using AI to optimize the 30 plus platforms. What are the biggest internal shifts since kind of like this change has been happening?
Yeah, I think few areas that we've been focusing on. One around the programming part. We've been using AI and predictive modeling to help our programming teams curate playlists that feel more personalized for the consumer, depending on the platforms that they're on, right? And using the data that we're getting and using the modeling to sort of understand the best times to serve up certain videos because of consumption across those platforms. So that's been huge for us as an evolution over the last 6 to 9 months. I think the other area which is important to us is the advertising side. And there we've built sort of what we call the Vevo Evolve product suite. And that's about optimization, AI, and predictive modeling that helps you marry clients' creatives to our premium content and allow you to real-time report on it, optimize it, as well as measure against it. And those have been our focuses over the recent months.
And so what's happening with AI now is it's like a moving target, right? And when you decide within your businesses to invest in something, it may be relevant even in 3 months. So how are you guys navigating that? Or do you have any thoughts on what it's a bit of the wild, wild west right now, right? And people, there's new tools coming up every day and they'll become irrelevant. I don't want to call out a brand, but we were walking on one that they have a whole setup and we're like, ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini made them irrelevant. Some people use it. And one of my friends said that we used to have a subscription. We got rid of it in December. So any thoughts on like internally, like how do you manage, how much investment do you have in like one particular system? Or are you internally already thinking that we just have to be nimble and adapt? We'll use this for now as long as it works, and then we might adapt. Whoever wants to go can jump in.
I mean, I think at Tripadvisor, like writ large, I feel bad for the legal team right now because, and like corporate affairs, because I think you're right. There's a lot of companies right now doing AI, and like I'm also trying to figure out. They really have to get a little bit better at differentiation. So like, what do we need? Like 60, LLMs? Probably not. But also trying to decide which one you pick is really difficult to know right now because you don't know where your business is going to be in the future with it. Like we really are at like this new frontier, and I think conversations like you had with your friend are going to be somewhat normal for probably the next 18 to 24 months, just because it's like, yep, we tried this partner and then we realized that somebody else was going to do it better, or our business strategy has now changed because of this. Like we're talking about, typical travel agents right now, like that might change with AI, right? We might have an AI travel agent. So how do we make sure that we're still supporting our suppliers and making sure our customers get what they want and tailoring itineraries the way that we need to? And using AI can help us get there faster, but we're not there yet to trust one to do it. But it's also then, like you mentioned earlier, ChatGPT would have never launched if it was like in a company because of how, like the flaws. So when do you just take the leap? Like, that's the hard part too. And I don't know that we have an answer.
I think it goes back to something that is very startup style. ChatGPT launched without having a business model. Like they had no clue. Then we had this wave of what we call LLM wrappers, right? So every, like Write Sonic, I'm going to do SEO with actually OpenAI. It's an interface, but the data is exactly the same. Now we're going out of that. I'm feeling terrible for all the meeting recording companies that got killed by OpenAI 10 days ago saying now it's natively in it. Because they had no idea the use case when they launched ChatGPT. So now it's becoming more, I think, foundational, especially in AdTech. I'm thinking of you also at Utiq on, like, when we go in AdTech and do we go AI with WS or do we go Azure with ChatGPT and OpenAI behind? These are going to be foundational choices for AdTech in the next 2 to 3 years, and these choices are now in basically the big three, right, including Anthropic.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think we're in this test and learn phase with many different companies because I think one size fits all is not going to work, right? Like I think there are elements of it that are optimization driven. So what are the tools that are going to help our teams be more efficient and effective, and how do we use AI for that? And then there are other areas where it might be more creative led, and I think there are different programs, different LLMs that can meet those criterias, and I think for us, it's all about learning and understanding all these different businesses and doing POCs with them to figure out what the right fit is for us. And that I think is how I perceive us kind of going in the future right now.
And some companies have more resources and ability to do that than others. Yeah. And I think from what you've said, it's a similar thinking. We've moved perhaps from last year or 18 months ago to being AI curious, to be a little bit more AI literate, and that's where we should be. But we don't know, at how quickly things evolve. We won't know if it's the right horse to back at this point in time. I think for the brands that we speak to, and also my personal view is, as long as sensibility is still kind of at the core, and you're still thinking with a commonsensical approach, work with partners or with tools that help do that. And it's not just kind of using AI because it's there and we can give this a go. Like just try and always keep that rational mind, because it's really exciting. I know we talk about the downsides of it, but it actually is really exciting. It's going to revolutionize everything, but we have to, I think, remain sensible.
Yeah, I agree with all these answers, and I like what you said. We've gone from sort of a curious to literate. I think that's a great frame. in general, I think our rule is experiment, try to keep like 60 to 70% consistent, 30% iteration. Because if you have an innovator mindset, if you're constantly iterating, trying new things, then you make some mistakes, but that's baked into the equation of how you're already thinking about your business. And so that's, I think, not just for AI, but how we test out tech in general. And we are not, as marketers, are not always incentivized to take risk. And I think sometimes our bosses have such expectations, our CEOs, expectations around what we need to deliver to just drive the business for the next day. But if you're always fighting for the next day, you're never going to look to the next year. And I think AI is a microcosm, which just happens to probably be more disruptive than the Industrial Revolution. So like, it's a big one. But I think that's really something that I wish we could all be more empowered to do, is find places to take those risks and feel really comfortable that in the failure, the lessons are learned. And I know even just personally, I've learned so much more from the mistakes I've made than I have from the things I've done right. And that applies very much to AI.
Sorry, you bring up a good point that I was thinking about too. And it's no longer it's not only trying to figure out how a company's going to use AI, but I think it's also a pivotal time to teach our employees how to apply AI tools into their day-to-day so that it's successful when we do launch it, right? And I think there's a lot of fear out there of what it's going to take over my role, or those types of things that I think we have to almost parallel path those things so that your teams are ready for when we're going into beta and out, and really launching these types of programs.
You lead into kind of like my final question. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, but that leans into like the way that you're managing your team within your company and like setting expectations and, bringing them along with you in that we want to advance and we want to automate where we can and use these tools to help you. And then we get to focus on, where your real skills lie in the creativity and the human element. Yeah.
So bottom line is it's almost impossible to future-proof your business at this point. But we can go down the line and start with Alexis for kind of like our last bit of it is if you have, because you kind of led into it, but did you already come up with like best practices for uses? And I think, or if you haven't, but what would be one important best practice for usage within your company?
One, and you did prepare us for this, yet somehow the heat of can, yeah. For me right now, the one thing AI really does well for me is make me more efficient in terms of the low-level tasks. And so like every time I am tempted to write a thank you note, send a calendar invite, do a GIF or something like that, I turn to AI and I have to, I've been in the workforce a long time. I have to train my brain to think that way, but that's like, how can you let it clear the decks for more creative thinking?
Yeah, 100% agree with that as well. And I start using that, and that's my kids have it as the go-to. Like they don't do anything else but go to chat first of all. I think in terms of best practice, actually going forward would be to think about AI, but also if you're going to integrate it and really use it like aggressively within your business, the outputs are going to be so much more than human output. So then it actually has an impact on, it creates many, many more decisions that humans have to make ultimately because, you want to keep your team in place. And so that in itself becomes less than efficient because you've got, people who now are going to take 2 weeks to make a decision based on way too much data.
Yeah, those are all good answers. Sort of down the same path that I was going to go. I think for me, it's teaching your team how to use it to become more efficient and more effective in their day-to-day. And I think also another lens for me is as you're using it in that way, how can we continue to iterate on it, come up with ideas, really allow your teams to help you sort of look at the future of what AI is.
For us at Camphouse AI has basically helped us a lot change the way we interact with our platform, because we're an operations data-heavy platform, and people, of course, don't interact the same way. If you have a very numbers-based memory like me, or if you're my 6-year-old daughter, she's got a visual memory, so when she wants to remember a Spotify song, she describes to me the actual picture of a song that she saw. We don't have the same way of memorizing elements, so we integrated a ChatGPT instance that actually allows us to talk to data that will be very different from me than someone who's going to be visual driven or natural language driven in how they want to access a specific data point. So I've been really liking this idea of how AI is actually becoming a UX tool for platforms like us.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get any more creative than everybody else did on here. But yeah, I think efficiency is the biggest gain of AI. And then again, it honestly allows for me to focus on hiring strategic folks, and folks who can actually impact long term, because we can, again, take some of those menial tasks out of the day to day. But I would also say all of this makes me think about the consumer journey too, right? We're up here are probably very used to going to Google to do a search. My 18-year-old nephew goes on TikTok to do searches. And now I'm recognizing, even in myself, I'm going to ChatGPT to get the answer, right? So I think the other thing we just have to keep in mind as we integrate AI all the time is how it changes the consumer journey too. And so how do we have to start making different decisions based on that, and that is one thing AI hasn't told me yet. So, it still says people go to search first. I'm like, but I'm here first. So, but I do think, as it evolves, that's something we should keep in mind.
Yes, and also what you guys all alluded to is critical thinking is key to using this tool. Oh my goodness, friends, thank you all. This was such a special panel. We got to peel back a layer, get behind the brains of some of these top companies globally. So thank you all, and thank you all. And if you want to share what you learned, you go to Win Lounge, or is it at #Win Lounge, and you can tag that anything that you learned from this session. So thank you all. Cheers.
Great, thank you.
Enjoy the day.